Week 13 of college football is here, and it's time to take a look at some of the big games from this week. We start with Florida State at NC State. Both teams are 5-5, and if you would have said that to someone at the beginning of the season, I think a lot of people would have been surprised about that. Florida State has had its fair share of struggles, and it seems like a distant memory, the win over Alabama. This is a Florida State team that is trying to keep Mike Norvell as their head coach. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that. I don't know if the team actually wants Mike Norvell as their head coach. We'll find out if that is the case in these next two games. Mike Norvell is coaching for his job. I think a lot of people expect that. I think a lot of people have that opinion that he is coaching to stay as the head coach at Florida State. It has not been a good year for the Seminoles. It had a great beginning, and then it kind of tapered off real quick to these recent struggles. Now, there's a lot of things that need to be fixed with this program, so Mike Norvell has to at least show that this is the right direction for this program to head. This is where we're going, and you almost have to win the last two games to give yourself the best chance to stick around. I don't know if this administration is going to want someone who finished 7-5. Granted, last year was much worse, but 7-5 also feels like a disappointment. Now, if you're NC State, you probably have some things that you want to see from your head coach as well. Dave Doeren has not had the greatest run here as of recently, and this year has been full of ups and downs. CJ Bailey has looked really good at times. He's also had his fair share of struggles. So if you're looking for a reason to get better, you have to look at the coaching staff and see, is this what we want going forward? I think Dave Doeren is going to be just fine. I think that he is going to be the head coach for NC State as long as he wants to be there, or as long as he's going to continue putting up these types of performances and showing that there is a bright future. If CJ Bailey sticks around, then you feel pretty good. If he hits the transfer portal, then maybe you're feeling like there's going to be a new change of direction at the head coaching position. So you're looking at two head coaches that are ready to either show that they're better or they're going to be shown the door. I think that's really hard to say too. I like Mike Norvell as a head coach. I like Dave Doeren as head coach. This is a game that has a lot of weight in probably that decision for each of those schools. Now, in terms of who wins this game, Florida State's a 4.5-point favorite with how much they've struggled at times. And if CJ Bailey plays to his potential, I actually am going to lean with NC State. They've been very up or down in every single game, and CJ Bailey holds the keys to their success. If he plays well, I think that NC State has the ability to pull off the upset here. Hawaii at UNLV. This is a game that has a huge amount of weight for each of these teams. Hawaii has been a surprise in the Mountain West this year. UNLV is still 8-2. I think that they are going to be an interesting team to watch the rest of the season, especially in this one. Now, if this game was in Hawaii, I'd feel more confident in the Rainbow Warriors. They actually probably would be favored in this one. But UNLV is a 3-point favorite at home. Now, these are two teams with their exciting aspects of their team, but they're also teams that have flaws that can be exposed. Now, when we're looking at the Hawaii side of things, Micah Alejado has been very fun to watch this year. Over 2,300 yards passing, 18 touchdowns. He has struggled with staying healthy, which is why his numbers aren't better, but he has been a really fun piece to watch in this offense. The passing attack has been as expected. He's played a big role in that, but his wide receivers have stepped up in a big way. Now, we expected certain players to elevate their game, but we also had questions about what kind of transfer impact would we see for this offense, which transfers would step up. Jackson Harris has been phenomenal. 42 catches, 731 yards, 17.4 yards per catch, and 10 touchdowns. You also have seen Brandon White step up. 33 catches, 359 yards, 10.9 yards per catch, and 1 touchdown. Pafeli Ashlock has been the consistent piece that returned from last year. We wondered what kind of impact he could have on this team, and he's second in yards, but he also leads the team in receptions with 58, 633 yards and 6 touchdowns. This passing attack has been kind of as expected when everybody's been healthy. When Mike Alejado was down for a little bit. Luke Weaver stepped up, and it wasn't the most prolific passing attack, but these wide receivers gave him some options. The rushing attack has been, I think, as expected. I don't think we expected this to be a great rushing attack or one that's going to have a big impact or be featured that much. But Landon Sims has been nice. Same with Cam Barfield. Sims is averaging 4.7 yards per carry, Barfield 5.0. So even though Sims has 487 yards and Barfield has 274, they've been efficient with their carries. And that's kind of the X factor for this offense, is the rushing attack. If this rushing attack is going to be good, then they are going to have a good offense. The offense is going to benefit from that tremendously. If they're going to be efficient, they're fine. If they're going to struggle, if they can't get the ball going on the ground, then they have to rely on a passing attack that technically can get the job done. I think that they can still move the ball down the field even when teams know that they're going to pass. Timmy Chang does a great job of bringing a diverse scheme into the game, and I think that they're going to be able to move the ball regardless of the rushing attack. It's just that the rushing attack has been a nice added benefit to this offense. Now, in terms of what they're going against, this defense is going to have their hands full. And when you look at what this team has done so far this year, the teams that they've played, this UNLV offense will be really tough to stop. You beat San Diego State in the last game, but before that, you played San Jose State. That San Jose State offense had explosive weapons, and Hawaii struggled to stop them, gave up 45 points in that game. You've also had other games like Arizona, and that's a very different team, obviously, than UNLV, but that was a 40-6 loss where the offense just was able to do whatever it wanted for Arizona, and Hawaii didn't really have an answer. So if this is going to be a close game, or if Hawaii wants to win this one, they have to find ways to create turnovers. They have to find ways to be disruptive, and certain guys will have to step up. Now, you've seen certain guys that are veterans of this group play to their potential. Peter Manuma, once again, has been the solid leader at safety for this team. You've also seen some linebackers step up that we talked about coming into the season. You've seen defensive linemen play to their potential. Jackie Johnson, his move to the defensive line has been really fun to watch. He's been disruptive. Dejon Benton has been very good. You've seen the secondary kind of benefit from that as well. If that front group is being disruptive, the secondary has benefited from that. So if Hawaii wants to win this one, they're going to have their hands full, and they're going to have to stop an offense that is very good. Averaging 36.6 points per game are the UNLV Rebels, and Dan Mullen is once again showing that he knows how to coach up an offense. Now, once they made the move to Anthony Calandria, it was very clear that he was QB1 for a lot of us heading into the season, and it didn't take long for him to take over as the starting quarterback. Over 2,500 yards with 18 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions as a passer. He's also second on the team in rushing, 101 carries for 512 yards and 7 touchdowns. He is a great dual threat that has been very fun to watch for this offense, and there have been a number of moments where he's made big plays in big moments. Jaden Thomas has been very good, kind of the forgotten player in this offense in a way, and he was a big reason why this team had success early in the year. He was kind of the steady force, the consistent force for this offense. 780 yards. He's still averaging 7.6 yards per carry, has 8 touchdowns. He's also been a factor with the passing attack with 30 catches for 173 yards. The passing attack has been it's needed some time to get going, and that's where Jaden Thomas has been a really nice piece. He got them a little bit of momentum while the wide receivers took over from there. Jaden Bradley is the one familiar face for a lot of these UNLV fans, and he leads the team with 43 catches for 712 yards and 3 touchdowns. You've seen some transfers take over as well, but it's clear that Jaden Bradley is the top guy. So once they got those things sorted out, this offense has really taken off and not hit a different level, but hit its stride. Now, the defense has been the group that struggled the most. And when you look at what UNLV is doing, they're scoring 36.6 points per game, but they're giving up 31. So when they win games, it's because they're just outscoring their opponents. Their defense has not done a great job of giving them much of a cushion. Now, the Colorado State game 2 games ago obviously gave them that. They're coming off a big win over Utah State in this past game, 29-26. But when you look at some of the other scores, it has not been a good year for this defense. New Mexico put up 40 points on them. Boise State put up 56. A win against Air Force, they gave up 48. So this defense is not exactly doing its part. It is not playing a role in helping this team get to where they need to be. And if teams find a way to put up points, they have a great chance of beating this team. And it doesn't take much for them to find explosive plays. And Hawaii is a team that can put up explosive plays at will. So UNLV is going to be in a tough spot if Hawaii finds that momentum and they're able to create those explosive plays. Now, UNLV is a 3-point favorite. I trust Hawaii more than I trust UNLV, but I do have concerns about what Hawaii can do to stop Anthony Colandrea. Colandrea is a former Power 4 talent that clearly is one of the better players on the field week in and week out, and that's going to be a tough thing for them to stop. But I do trust Hawaii and what they're able to do, and if UNLV finds even a remote sign of improvement defensively, a small step, then they're going to win this game. But I'm going to pick Hawaii to win. I'm going with an upset here. I think that the Rainbow Warriors are playing with a lot more confidence. They're playing with a little bit more consistency, and I trust them to win this game. Rutgers at Ohio State. I don't think anybody's picking Rutgers to win this game, but it's going to be interesting to see how close they can keep it. There have been teams that have keep things close against Ohio State, and it's just been for how long can they hang on, because Ohio State ultimately just pulls away. The Buckeyes are 31.5-point favorites, and it's going to be interesting to watch this team for the rest of the year. We're basically just watching what Julian Sand can do, what Jeremiah Smith can do, but we're also keeping an eye on Carnell Tate. Did not play in the UCLA game. That is a storyline to follow, and one that could have a major impact, not necessarily on this game, but in the future for what this team can do. Maybe are they just being cautious with him because they know they're going to the college football playoff? They don't have a ton to worry about, and they just need him back for the Michigan game or the Big Ten championship. That is something to keep an eye on. For Rutgers, you're trying to get the bowl eligibility, and I think there's some good things with this team to keep an eye on. How you defend Jeremiah Smith is going to be a big question. And maybe you hang on for longer than people expect, but I don't think a lot of people are giving the Scarlet Knights much of a chance, and Ohio State's definitely going to win this game. Missouri at Oklahoma. Missouri might be getting Bo Pribula back, and that could be a huge impact on this offense. Though if you're going to give the ball to Ahmad Hardy, maybe you don't even need a quarterback, just one Wildcat the entire time. Hardy's 300-yard performance last week was absolutely insane. I don't think anybody saw that coming, and they needed it. Mississippi State was keeping things close until Ahmad Hardy decided to take over that football game. So getting Pribula back would be huge. And this is an Oklahoma team coming off a massive win in Tuscaloosa last week. And this is an Oklahoma team that has a lot of confidence in what they are doing. The defense plays a huge role. And in a way, Missouri does need Pribula to come back, because this is an Oklahoma defense that can shut down Ahmad Hardy, and they're basically going to dare Missouri to try to throw the football. And while Pribula is not exactly a gunslinger, he's much more consistent than Matt Zoller. So I think that that's going to be huge if that does happen. If not, how do they get Hardy to have another one of those performances, or how does the passing attack step up? Because again, this Oklahoma team is riding high after a big win, and Missouri is a team that still has the ability to pull off an upset. You have to play the right style of football if you're Oklahoma. They have to play a certain way, and taking away the other team's offense is a great way for them to get success, to find that successful position to be in. And John Mateer is good, but one way that Oklahoma can get in trouble is if he starts forcing things. Turnovers are happening, and Missouri has the defense to be able to shut down this Oklahoma offense. I think Missouri's defense does not get nearly enough credit with the number of good defenses that we're seeing in the SEC. And if they're able to slow down this Sooners passing attack, this Sooners rushing attack, this is a Missouri team that's going to build their confidence and feel like they have a chance to win this one on the road. Whether or not that happens, I don't know. But Pribula coming back could give them an opportunity to do that. Now, Oklahoma is a 9.5-point favorite, and there's a reason for that. Part of it is the Missouri quarterback situation. That is something to monitor for the rest of the week, especially if you are betting on this line. 9.5 is a solid number if Perdula is not playing. If he plays, that number is going to change. Now, in terms of winning this game's at home for Oklahoma. As long as they can get over they can move on from the excitement that is beating Alabama, they're going to be focused. And Brent Venables has done a great job of getting his defense in sync and in rhythm early in games. And if they're disruptive, they're going to be just fine. Stopping Ahmad Hardy is their top priority. And if they're able to do that, they should have no problem beating Missouri. I am going to go with Oklahoma. I think that it's very interesting storyline to keep an eye on if Perdula is able to go. But I think Oklahoma is going to win this game and continue their path to the college football playoff. Miami at Virginia Tech. Now, this is a game that Miami should win, but with the struggles that we've seen from them, maybe this is one that is closer than expected. I'm honestly surprised that the line is only 17.5. I thought this line would be much bigger, but we've also seen Miami struggle. And this is a big game for Miami because this is a team that the College Football Playoff Committee still considers a playoff team. So they have to have a big game. And we're talking about a team that needs style points. They need to win this game by a lot. So the 17.5, they have to blow that out of the water. Now, Virginia Tech hasn't been great. They've shown some signs of improvement since Brent Pry has been fired, but this is not a game that a lot of people anticipate being close. The fact that it is on the road for Miami is the only concern that people have. If they can play consistent, if they can continue to be a dominant team, what they've shown this year, as long as they avoid that lapse in intensity. We've talked about that and how they just at times just are okay with being average. And I don't think that they do it intentionally. They're just satisfied with where they're at. And if they're up 20 points, they're just okay with that. They have to blow Virginia Tech out of the water. Now, I do think Miami is going to win this game, and it's really going to be fun to watch this team. If they're able to win these next two games by a lot, then you have a conversation to be had about an at-large bid or whatever might happen. But Miami needs to take care of business. If they struggle to win this game, it doesn't matter if they finish 10-2 and they don't put up big numbers, they're not getting in the playoff. So it's still, even though it's a small chance, they still have a chance to get into the playoff, and they have to show that they mean business if they're going to get there. The monumental matchup between the Louisville Cardinals and SMU Mustangs takes place in week 13. And these are two teams that are really fun to watch when they're playing at their peak. SMU is still in the ACC championship discussion, which is not something that we would have talked about especially halfway through the season or even the first half of the season. I don't think a lot of people anticipated that the Mustangs were still going to be in that conversation. And Louisville, they are on the outside looking in. Unfortunately, their ACC title hopes are done, but they can play spoiler to an SMU team that still has it very much in control for themselves. They currently sit at 5-1 in conference play, which is tied with Pitt. Virginia and Georgia Tech are 6-1. So they have a chance to be tied for first place here. And there are 2 games left for these two teams. And it's going to be interesting to see which one of them can make it, because also the winner of the ACC championship is going to get into the college football playoff. And I don't think a lot of people anticipated that SMU was going to be a potential playoff team this year, especially after what we saw at the beginning of the year. You went to the playoff last year, you weren't living up to expectations, and now here we are in week 13, and SMU has a chance to make the playoff once again. It's going to be tough, though. If there's a team that can take down anybody, it's the Louisville Cardinals. I trust Jeff Brom to play well, or his team to play well in big games. We've seen it time and time again. Now, when you look at what they can do well, Miller Moss has to play consistently. That has been the biggest key for this team week in and week out. How well can Miller Moss play? Can you get him comfortable? Can you get him in rhythm? And can you get him to find his top playmakers? Chris Bell has been tremendous this year. 67 catches, 871 yards, 6 touchdowns. I think his numbers could be even better. If you had a slightly better quarterback than Miller Moss, you're looking at a guy that's easily over 1,000 yards, maybe even pushing 1,500. That's how good Chris Bell has been. Colin Lacey would also potentially be a 1,000-yard receiver. Those have been their top two targets. But this is a team that has relied on the rushing attack more, mostly because the passing attack doesn't have the depth and the consistency at quarterback to be a big-time threat week in and week out. I think that this rushing attack has done a great job in Isaac Brown's absence. Keywan Brown and Duke Watson continue to play at a high level. And this is a guy in Isaac Brown that was averaging 8.6 yards per carry. Keywan Brown has come in and been very good for them. He's averaging 7.3 yards per carry, leads the team with 6 rushing touchdowns, and Duke Watson was a nice complement to him as well. So this rushing attack it came in the year with good depth, and it's consistently been a solid piece for this offense. And when they need to pick up yards, they typically turn to this rushing attack, and those two guys have delivered. So if you're looking at how do you beat this team, it's basically making Miller Moss beat you. You're daring him to take some of these deep shots and make some of these tighter throws. And we'll talk about SMU's defense here in just a little bit. Miller Moss has to be consistent, especially early in this game, because if SMU is going to win this one, they're going to rattle him and make sure that he is not in rhythm. And at that point, all they have to worry about is stopping the run. Now, this Louisville defense has plenty of explosive players to defend themselves. That being said, the easiest way that we've seen the Cardinals disrupt an opponent's plan is with their defensive line. When they've needed big plays, this defensive line has stepped up in major moments. And when the spotlight has been really bright, there have been times where this defensive line continues to play at a high level. The James Madison game is the one I always remember, because you look at that James Madison game, the Dukes felt like they have a chance. Now, Isaac Brown had his big moment where he broke open the game. But when James Madison wanted to make a comeback, it was guys like Wesley Bailey, Clev Lobin that stepped up in a big way and made big plays. And that's what they need to do in this one. Kevin Jennings is going to be a tough guy to stop, but he is not immune to mistakes. He is not immune to interceptions. And if you're going to be disruptive, you're going to need those guys to do that. You're going to need them to be disruptive and get into the backfield, because this is an offense that has been inconsistent protecting Kevin Jennings, and he has dealt with injuries. So it's not like his mobility is what it was at the beginning of the year. He's not at 100%. So if there's a group that can make a big impact on this game, it's Louisville's defensive line. And if you're able to slow down this SMU attack, then you are in a great position to potentially win this game. Now, SMU, like I said, SMU has been kind of all over the place this year. We've seen some really good things from them. We've also seen them struggle at times. So when you look at a team that is trying to make a run, I think that SMU is an inconsistent team overall. I mean, even just 3 games ago, they lost to Wake Forest 13-12. They beat Miami two games ago, 26-20, and then they beat Boston College 45-13 on November 8th. But you see the difference of team that you get on a consistent basis. Now, fortunately, the games that they have lost have been teams that you could consider inferior to the ones that they've beaten. Beating Miami was a big win, but when you lose to Wake Forest, when you lose to TCU, Baylor, now you can make an argument that TCU's a good team compared to or along the same lines of SMU, but Baylor's been struggling. So what team are we going to get is probably the biggest question that I have. Which team are we going to see? Are we going to see the one that's dialed in and ready to compete? Or are we going to see the team that is struggling to score points or struggling to get stops? We've seen a lot of different versions of SMU, and I'm very curious which one shows up in this game. Now, like I said, Kevin Jennings having a solid year. And again, coming into this year, I don't think a lot of people gave him the credit he deserved, but here we are. Over 2,800 yards, 21 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Like I said, his mobility has kind of taken a hit with his injuries, and he has not been the version of himself that maybe he wants to be. So how healthy is he going to be for this game? Also, which playmakers can step up if he's not able to go? I think he's still very capable of making the right throws. He's able to put enough velocity on his passes. The rushing attack is going to help him tremendously. They're not going to do a ton of quarterback designed runs. So TJ Arden and Chris Johnson Jr. have been nice when he's needed it. So that rushing attack needs to play a huge role. Now, the passing attack has been interesting to watch because Romello Brinson for the first part of the season was the only consistent piece that we saw. But recently, Jordan Hudson, Yamir Knight, we've seen them step up in a big way, and that's helped this offense. You have three guys that have over 400 yards receiving, and they have been very fun to watch against opposing secondaries. Now, this is a Louisville secondary that has its weaknesses, and the speed of SMU could potentially put a ton of stress on them and give them an advantage. It really comes down to the offensive line, though, for SMU. This is a Louisville defensive line that is capable of changing the game by themselves. And if Jennings doesn't have his mobility and he can't escape some of that pressure, then maybe they have an even bigger impact. It comes down to what SMU can do up front. How can they protect their star quarterback? How can they ensure that the rushing attack is consistent? That's going to be a big question that I have coming into this game. SMU is a good team. They have just been inconsistent. And again, the biggest question is going to be, which one of them do we get? Which team do we get? Is it the SMU that beat both Clemson and Miami in the same year? Or is it the SMU that is like in the past where they're losing to TCU and Baylor because they just can't get the job done? That's going to be a big question. The stakes are high. The playoff is still on the table for these SMU Mustangs. They are still very much in control of their own destiny, and they can make it to where they want to be. But this is going to be a tough game. Playing at home makes it a little bit easier. They are 3-point favorites, so if you're looking at an advantage, SMU does have that. It really comes down to how disruptive can they be to Miller Moss and how well can they keep their own quarterback upright. I'm going to go with SMU here. I'll pick them to win. I'll pick them to cover too. I think Louisville is a very good football team still that is capable of pulling off an upset. So this is going to be a fun ACC matchup to watch, especially with everything that is still at stake. Minnesota at Northwestern. Minnesota is 6-4. Northwestern's 5-5, and feels like they should be 6-4. They came up short last week against Michigan, and Minnesota's looking to bounce back after a tough loss to the Oregon Ducks. Northwestern is a 4.5-point favorite, which speaks to the work that David Ron has done with this program. The amount of things that he's done to get them to this position says a lot about what they've battled through. Because when you watch their first game against Tulane, you probably didn't think they were going to be on the verge of making a bowl game at this point. They're 5-5 and they're 4.5-point favorites, like I said, against a Minnesota team that is going through some struggles, but also has had plenty of success. Now, Northwestern is a very interesting team to watch, and they play with a ton of intensity. They are going to play hard and they are going to play with good fundamentals. So for Minnesota to win this game, they're going to have to play fundamentally sound football. And they saw a physical team in Oregon last week, and now they get another one in Northwestern. It's always tough for Minnesota to beat Northwestern on the road. It feels like the Wildcats have Minnesota's number time and time again, and these are two teams that are fairly even match. I think that Northwestern is going to win this one, but Minnesota is going to be a tough matchup, and if you're expecting points, you probably don't want to watch this game. Kansas at Iowa State. At the beginning of the year, you thought maybe this was going to be a potential Big 12 championship game, but now two teams that are out of that consideration face off in what should still be an interesting game. Kansas is 5-5, Iowa State's 7-3, and 4.5-point favorites in this game. I'm very interested to watch both quarterbacks. Jalen Daniels is still very fun to watch this year. He's having a really good year, maybe his best of his collegiate career. And Rocco Becht is flying under the radar, mostly because his receivers have not been consistent enough to give him the same success that we saw last year. But this is a traditional Big 12 matchup that you're going to see. You're going to see two teams that are, I think it's going to be a very tightly contested game. I actually do like Kansas to keep this game close. In terms of winning the game, I'm going to go with Iowa State, but I think it's going to be maybe like a field goal type of game. Still a very fun Big 12 matchup to watch. Washington State at James Madison may not be the biggest game of the weekend, but it has big implications because James Madison is still in the running for the college football playoff. We'll see where the committee ranks them on Tuesday and where they stand compared to the American, but there are a lot of people who think that they still have a chance. This is a matchup they have to win. They do have to win out, plain and simple. They lose another game, they're out. But if they keep winning, they're going to be in a good position to potentially make the college football playoff. It really depends on what the committee thinks of it. And if they're able to win this one by a good margin, they're 14-point favorites in this game. If they're able to win this one by a good margin, that gives them style points to be able to get into the playoff. Going to be tough. It is really going to be tough. The American is right behind them or right in front of them, depending on who you are. And it's going to be a challenge for them to get into the playoff. Winning games like this and winning them soundly is going to help them tremendously. I do think James Madison wins this game. I'm surprised that Washington State was able to turn things around, especially with their early season struggles. So this is a better Washington State team than I think people realize. And James Madison, if they're able to win by quite a bit, then they're going to be in a good position to give the committee something to consider about who that Group of 5 team is for the college football playoff. Baylor at Arizona. Arizona has been a big surprise for the Big 12. I think a lot of people expected them to struggle to make a bowl game, and they're already at 7-3. They're actually 2 one-score games away from being 9-1 and in the Big 12 title conversation. Now, they're not in that, but they are definitely a better team than people expected. Baylor is an interesting team to watch as well for a different reason. Dave Aranda, I think, is coaching for his job. He has to make a bowl game, plain and simple. That much I don't think is debatable. I think that if he does not make a bowl game, then we're going to have a conversation about who the next coach is at Baylor. Now, when you're looking at this game, you have 2 quarterbacks that are playing really well. Sawyer Robertson, the hype surrounding him has kind of died because of Baylor's struggles. Noah Fifita is flying under the radar. He's having a good year, even without his star wide receiver, Tedero McMillan, who went to the NFL. But that has been one of the best things for him. One of the best things that Noah Fifita had was not being able to default to one guy. He's been forced to go through his progressions. He's been forced to use the entire offense, and that has helped him tremendously. Arizona is a 6.5-point favorite. I'm going with the Wildcats. I trust Brent Brennan more than I trust David Aranda, and this one honestly could be one that has a ton of points. One of the earliest predictions I had for Conference USA was Missouri State potentially competing for a Conference USA championship. I think that this is still a very good team at 7-3, and Kennesaw State has been a surprise as well at 7-3. Now, when it comes to this game, Kennesaw State is a 6.5-point favorite, but Missouri State has shown that it can be a challenge to beat. And this is an offense that has shown at times it can put up points in a hurry. Kennesaw State, though, still very much both teams are in the conversation to potentially play for a conference championship. Jacksonville State is still undefeated in conference play. Western Kentucky, Kennesaw State, and Missouri State are all tied for second with 1 loss. So this is a big one for both teams. The winner keeps their hopes alive. The loser is out, but still has a good year. Missouri State's in their first year as an FBS program. Kennesaw State was terrible last year. They made a coaching change, clearly was the right move, and this is going to be a fun one to watch. I'm going to go with Missouri State. I think they're going to pull off the upset here and surprise a lot of people. I think a lot of people expected Delaware to be in this position, but it's actually Missouri State that is here. UConn is playing its final game of the season, which is very strange to say. It feels weird that we're talking about them in their final game, and they're going against an FAU team that is trying to get to bowl eligibility. UConn's trying to get 9 wins after what they did last year. That would be a very impressive feat by Jim Mora and this staff. They are in a great position, and they're 7-point favorites in this game. Now, the biggest thing they have to do is slow down this FAU offense. The Owls are a potentially dangerous team offensively, and UConn has its hands full. Now, this is going to be the third unique offense that they'll face in the last 3 weeks. They played Duke 2 weeks ago to be able to win that. They then played Air Force triple option attack this past week and won. Now they face more of an air raid type offense in FAU, and that's going to give them another challenge. If they're able to get to 9-3, this is going to be an impressive performance from this team as a whole. I don't think a lot of people expected them to be at this point, and we talked about the potential for this team to win 9 or 10 games. I mentioned that in the preseason, and here we are. For FAU, how do you get to a bowl game? I think a 5-7 season would feel better, but it would also be disappointing. So getting to 6-6 with a win this week and then the next game would be huge. And Zach Kittley is clearly doing some good things, and he needs to show that there's going to be momentum heading into next year. I am going to go with UConn, though. I don't think that FAU has enough consistency to be able to beat a Huskies team that is showing that it is a consistent team and it is capable of winning these types of games. So I think UConn gets to 9-3, and FAU is just going to try to finish 5-7. Arguably the game of the week is USC at Oregon, and it feels really weird for a lot of different reasons. It's weird that these are two teams that are in the Big Ten. I think that's the biggest reason why this is weird. This is a Big Ten matchup. It's not a Pac-12 matchup. And that's the part of college football realignment that I don't like. I don't like that this is a Big Ten matchup. I don't like that it's not in the Pac-12 anymore. No, you have to get over it. I have to get over it, but it's just the weirdest thing to have this be a Big Ten matchup. And a Big Ten matchup that holds tremendous weight for the college football playoff. Both of these teams are still in that conversation. And both teams are technically still in the Big Ten championship conversation as well. Now, they do need Indiana and or Ohio State to lose, and even then, tiebreakers would come into play. But they're still technically in it. They're on the outside looking in, but they are still technically in this conversation. But really what they're looking for is an at-large berth to the college football playoff. Now, when you look at how these two teams got here, these are two teams that are not without flaw. Both of them have struggled in certain games, and that has raised concerns about what they could do in the playoff. Now, when you look at USC, they have losses to Illinois and Notre Dame. Those are going to hurt. Granted, they were closer losses, so it wasn't like they got destroyed, but there are some concerns about, is this USC team capable of making a run to the playoff? Are they capable of beating a team like Oregon? That is a big question. Now, you look at the talent that they have, they are capable of doing it, but can they actually pull through? Now, for Oregon, their biggest game of the year was a 10-point loss to Indiana. Their best win is against a 5-5 Northwestern team at the beginning of the season. So, what is that going to do for them in terms of the playoff? Especially if they happen to lose this game, that's when conversations need to be had about, if they're 10-2, what does that mean for them? Are they going to be a playoff team? We're not at that point, but that's the stuff you have to look ahead to, because it's going to be a question if you walk into that situation and all of a sudden you have a 10-2 Oregon team and your best win is going to be probably against Washington if you're able to beat them. But for this game, I'm very excited to watch both quarterbacks. We'll start with USC. Jayden Maiava is having a good year, and I think that he has been very fun to watch at times. He's also struggled with consistency. If you get consistent Jayden Maiava, then you're going to have a chance. You're also going to have to do this on the road. Over 2,800 yards for him, 18 touchdowns. His wide receivers have been phenomenal. I think that Mekhi Lemon is one of the best, if not the best wide receiver in college football. You can make an argument for that based off of his production. You can make an argument for that. Jacoby Lane has been explosive at times. He's made highlight reel catches. He is a very dangerous option. You've also seen other guys step up when injuries have played a role. Tight end Lake McCree has been a big role of this offense. Tanook Hines has been a emerging player for them as well. So you've had guys that have made Maieva's life a lot easier, but you've also seen him struggle in big time games where you need him to play well. The Nebraska game was not pretty. And if you're picking Oregon to win, it's because you're pointing to that game as an example of what you can do to slow him down. Now, the rushing attack has been really good, and there's a reason why they let Quinton Joyner walk, which at the time was crazy. I think a lot of people were questioning why they would let him go to the portal and leave. But when you look at what this running back room has been this year, you can see why. You had Waymon Jordan. You knew that even before Quinton Joyner was going to transfer. You knew that he was going to be a potential star for this team. And he goes out with an injury, and I think fans were wondering, okay, well, now what do we do? King Miller has stepped up, and they haven't skipped a beat. 99 carries for him, 719 yards. He's averaging 7.3 yards per carry with 5 touchdowns. Eli Sanders has been kind of that Swiss Army knife, that utility back as a runner and as a pass catcher as well. So they've been fine without Waymon Jordan, and King Miller has been a huge reason why. They need that rushing attack to play a role this weekend. They need their offensive line to be able to have an impact and be efficient running the football. Because if they are not able to do that, you're going to be in for probably a long matchup. Now, your defense has to step up as well. Oregon's dealing with some injuries, and I have a feeling that a lot of those guys that can go will play in this game. That being said, this is a defense that at times has been able to shut down the opposing offense, but other times you've seen them struggle. Which kind of defense are we going to get? Are they ready for the physicality that is the Oregon Ducks? I'm very curious to see what Oregon is going to roll out in terms of their offense, because this has been a versatile offense. At times they've been kind of a ground and pound power team. They've also been that traditional Ducks team that spread it out. Dante Moore has been awesome. He's been so good with this offense, but he also needs his receivers and his pass catchers to be available. If they're not able to go, then that's where USC maybe is in position to potentially pull off this upset. Oregon's 9.5 point favorites right now. And I think that indicates that some of those guys should be able to go. Now, who's going to be able to go? I don't know. I don't have that inside information, but that's a huge part of this game. Oregon's 9-1. They're still very much in that playoff conversation. In fact, right now, if they win out, they're in. There's not a question about that. But like I said, if this team struggles and they have 2 losses at the end of the year, there might be a conversation about keeping them out. I don't necessarily know if I'd be part of that conversation, but it is a conversation that will be had. You can deny it all you want, but people are going to look at these resumes and wonder what Oregon's doing with their best win being 5-5 Northwestern, or if they beat Washington, that would be their best win. That's not a strong resume, and quality losses just don't matter. I don't want to hear that. But this is an Oregon team that controls its own destiny for the playoff. To get back to a playoff where you have a sour taste in your mouth from the playoff, and I think Dan Lanning's done a great job of keeping his team focused week to week. They did not get caught looking ahead to this game against USC when they were playing Minnesota. They took care of business against Minnesota. They made sure that, hey, we're not worried about next week because we can't play that game next week until we get past Minnesota. They took care of business. They won. They went on to the next thing, and they take it day by day. If there's a guy that can get his team focused in the right way, it's Dan Lanning. And this is where they need to be focused now. They don't have to worry about the next game. They're worried about USC because USC is capable of beating this team. Now, the one nice thing for Oregon is even with the injuries, because your top receiver is Decorian Moore, who only has 443 yards. So it's not like this offense has been an air raid by any means. The rushing attack has been deep. The rushing attack has been efficient. Of their top 4 running backs, Jalen Lamar has the lowest yards per carry at 5.9. He's averaging nearly 6 yards a carry, and he's the worst on this team. De'Aaron Hill Jr., 8.7. Jordan Davison, 7. Noah Whittington, 8.2. This is a rushing attack that is very efficient, and you have to give credit to the offensive line. That's another area to look at. What is Alex Harkey's status going forward? That's going to be something to pay attention to. But this rushing attack has been just fine regardless of what's going on with the passing attack and regardless of who's up front. That has been very fun to watch and very promising for this Oregon team. And if they can pull it all together by the end of the season, in this game and in the next one, this is a dangerous team in the playoff because they have the ability to win it all. This is a team that can win a national championship. They just have to be healthy. They have to be consistent. And again, the health is the biggest thing. They need De'Corian Moore to be healthy. They need Kenyon Sadiq. They need Gary Bryant Jr. They have weapons. They have 6 guys that have 200 yards receiving or more. That is something to keep an eye on. How consistent can they be throwing the ball? And what does that mean for them going forward? Now, their defense has to find ways to get to Jane Maeva. And Nebraska kind of gave them the blueprint for doing that. They gave them the blueprint of how do we slow him down and make him inconsistent? Because this USC team is explosive when they're playing at their ceiling, but they're real rough when they're at their floor and when they're struggling. And if there's a defense that can find ways to be disruptive to USC, it's the Oregon Ducks. That's a team can definitely do that. So how do you make that happen is going to be the big key. And playing at home is huge. Playing in Autzen Stadium is always going to be an advantage that the Ducks will utilize. And if they're able to slow down this USC passing attack, especially with the talent that group has, then you're going to be in a great position to win this football game. I am going to pick the Ducks to win this one. I just don't think that USC has the ability to keep this one close, especially if Oregon is making life tough for Jane Maeva. Again, injuries are going to play a role in Oregon and their offense, but I'm very curious to see what they can do. We've seen them be tough. They clearly have depth, and that could be enough to win this game. Arkansas at Texas. This is a tough place for Texas to be in because they're essentially out of the college football playoff conversation, which is what a lot of us anticipated. They're going against a 2-8 Arkansas team, but that's an Arkansas team that I think is still playing relatively hard despite their record. Taylor Green is always tough to stop, and at Texas, I'm very curious to see I'm not questioning their effort, but I'm very curious to see their intensity level in this game. You're essentially out of the playoff conversation. You don't really have a lot to play for, if you will. And there have been a lot of concerns about this team. And it kind of just, last week was just kind of sealed their fate for the rest of the season. Now they're 7-3. They can still finish 9-3, and that'd be a good year. They can also ruin some things for other teams, or at least put a sour taste in their mouth. Maybe they're looking ahead to the Texas A&M game. You know they're going to play for that one. That's going to be interesting. They're 10.5-point favorites. I don't think I have concerns about them losing this game. Arkansas might keep things interesting, but Texas is going to win this one for sure. Kentucky at Vanderbilt is not a game that I think a lot of people thought would be this important, but Vanderbilt is still in that playoff conversation. Kentucky is playing a lot better as of recently. So this is a game that's going to be tough for Vanderbilt to win. They are 10-point favorites, but the Wildcats are playing with a lot of confidence. Now, beating Vanderbilt is going to be their toughest challenge of this recent stretch, and so that is the reason why I will pick Vanderbilt to win this game. Kentucky's been playing better, but beating Vanderbilt, the team that Vanderbilt is a much different challenge. Duke at North Carolina. This is not a big game anymore because Duke is out of the ACC title conversation, but it's a rivalry game that still has a ton of weight for both of these schools. North Carolina is trying to keep their bowl hopes alive. Duke is trying to finish the year strong. Finishing the year 7-5 would be great. They're 6.5-point favorites, and North Carolina hasn't been great, but they know that they're capable of beating Duke. And Duke has shown its flaws at times, but this is a team that should be able to win this one. I think that Duke is the better team. We've seen it time and time again, but they've also struggled with consistency. And this is a rivalry game. Rivalry games, there's so much that can happen in these games. There's so much that is still capable of going down. And I think that if you're North Carolina, even though you're the inferior team, you should still feel confident that you can potentially win this game. If you're Duke, Take care of business early. You do not want North Carolina sticking around, and you do not want them thinking that they have a chance. I think Duke wins this game. I think they win it by a comfortable margin. They're just the better team. And then North Carolina's bowl hopes are essentially gone, and Duke is then eligible themselves. ECU's American Conference title hopes are still alive, and they're going to put them on the line against UTSA. And while that may not seem like a big deal going against a 5-5 team, when you look at what UTSA has done at home, this is a terrifying game for the Pirates. They're still, like I said, in contention for that conference title. But if you ask Tulane, beating UTSA at home is going to present plenty of challenges. That place is going to be rocking. That is a fan base that is still very much invested in its team, and beating a team like ECU and ruining their title hopes is going to be something that fan base would enjoy so much. This is a very different UTSA team at home than they are away from the Alamo Dome. That is going to be fun to watch. ECU, there's a lot of pressure on them. The spotlight is on them, and it's very bright. How do they navigate this tough test? How do they navigate a tough challenge, which is a UTSA team that almost has superpowers at home? Jeff Traylor may not be in those coaching candidate conversations anymore, but there's one thing he can do, which is win at home. This team is very different to beat on the road. If you're ECU, that's going to be a big time challenge to keep your potential title hopes alive. Now, if you're ECU, you've looked much different in recent weeks. The offense has found its footing, and you've seen them score at a pretty impressive clip. They beat Memphis 31-27 this past week to keep those title hopes alive, and they have 2 road trips keeping them from being in the title conversation in the title game. They scored 48 against Charlotte, 45 against Temple, 41 against Tulsa. So this offense is finding its footing at the right time. And Caden Hauser deserves a lot of credit for his success so far this year. Hauser has completed 66% of his passes, over 2,800 yards, 15 touchdowns to just 5 interceptions. And last week was just a gritty performance by this team. Now, we talked about the rushing attack. We talked about what it's capable of doing, and it's a deep group. London Montgomery has been the leader with 637 yards and 7 touchdowns. Marlon Gunn is a big body that they brought in time and time again, and he's picked up big yards in big moments. TJ Engelman's a young player that they're excited about for his future. He's just in a very deep running back room. And then Parker Jenkins at times as well. When people kind of forget about him is when he's had his biggest impact. Caden Hauser has also been a part of the rushing attack. He already has 7 touchdowns on a year that tied to tie with London Montgomery for the lead. And he has been a nice threat for this rushing attack, especially when things aren't going to plan. So that's going to be a really interesting thing to watch in this game. How does UTSA slow down that rushing attack, and how do they get them in a position where they're disruptive and forcing ECU into uncomfortable situations? Now, the passing attack has been great for ECU. Anthony Smith and Yannick Smith have played to their potential, and that's been a big reason why they've been successful. Brock Spalding has stepped up in a big way as well. Desirio Riles at tight end and Javonte Connor have also played a role. That's a deep group. And this is an offense that does not rely on one player at the running back room or in the rushing attack, in the passing attack. They know they have depth. And that's probably the biggest thing for this group and the scariest thing about them. Slowing this team down isn't going to be easy because you can't just single out one guy. You can't just say Anthony Smith is who we're going to take away. Now, you can find ways to slow them down, but you can't pick out one guy and say we're only going to focus on him. That's going to be a problem for any team that faces ECU. Now, for the Pirates, the big thing is going to be how do you slow down UTSA's offense? Because this is a defense for ECU that has stepped up in a big way. They've been disruptive. They've had multiple guys play big in big moments. But playing on the road against UTSA, where again, that UTSA team at home is a much different team. That offense is a much different team. That's crazy what they've been able to do. And the Tulane game was a perfect example of that. It was a game in which a lot of people expected Tulane to be able to take care of business, and UTSA ran them out of town. That was a very surprising performance. But when you look at what UTSA has done, they do not lose very often at home, especially under Jeff Traylor. It's been a crazy run for them, and this is going to be a huge test for ECU. How do you get pressure on that offense? How do you get Owen McCown in a position where he's not comfortable? That's going to be a big question. And for their own offense, how do you deal with the crowd noise? How do you deal with a team that plays so much more confidently at home? How do you deal with that? Because your title hopes are on the live, and you're going to have a lot of pressure. The spotlight, like I said, is going to be on you. UTSA has nothing to lose in this game, and that's what makes them so dangerous. Now, Owen McCown has had his ups and downs this year. He has been consistent at times and inconsistent in others. Over 2,100 yards, 20 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Robert Henry Jr. has been the spotlight player the entire season. He's still averaging 7.1 yards per carry. He leads the team with 9 touchdowns and 983 yards. Will Henderson III, though, has been a nice little piece for them as well. Kind of flies under the radar because most people are focused on Robert Henry. 86 carries for him, 603 yards. He's also averaging 7 yards per carry with 4 touchdowns. The passing attack has been diverse. Devin McEwen leads the team with 567 yards and 7 touchdowns. A.J. Wilson has been solid. He's averaging 19.5 yards per catch. David Amador, tight end Houston Thomas. They have guys that can play a huge role. And Owen McCown feels comfortable knowing he has those guys available. They are going against an ECU secondary that is disruptive, that has shown that it can create turnovers and make things difficult for the teams they're playing. That's going to be a big question that I have for this team going forward. How are you able to consistently be with your offense? Because this ECU team, even though they're coming into UTSA's turf, how do you consistently play that way? Can you keep that magic at home and just play almost numb? Like just continue doing what you're doing at home. UTSA is a good team still, and the record, I don't think, indicates how good they actually are. The biggest question I have for UTSA is, can their defense step up? Can their defense slow down this ECU offense? That is a big question. I don't necessarily know what the answer is to that question because we've seen what ECU can do, and turnovers are going to be the biggest way. You look at the Tulane game, essentially just do what you did in the Tulane game. You can essentially do the same thing. Now, the problem is that Caden Hauser is a much better passer than any quarterback on Tulane's roster. So you can't necessarily do the exact same thing, but take that formula and adapt it to this ECU game plan. That is going to be the biggest way, I think, that ECU is going to struggle if UTSA can find a way to do that. Now, ECU is a 3-point favorite, and honestly, I'm surprised that UTSA is not favored. We'll see what this line looks like going forward. I am going to pick ECU to keep their title hopes alive. I think that UTSA is going to give them a lot of trouble, but I do trust ECU, especially with how they've been playing recently. They just can't have a hangover game, because if they do, UTSA is going to win this one by a lot. If they struggle because they're just so excited that they beat Memphis, they're not going to be in the title conversation anymore. And UTSA has a big opportunity to ruin that for them. They almost ruined it for Tulane, and now they have a chance to actually do it against ECU. But I am going to pick the Pirates to hang on in this one, find a way to win, and be in that title conversation for the last game of the season as well. Speaking of those Tulane Green Wave, they go to Temple, and they have another tough test. But this is a tough test for a different reason. Temple is a tough team, plain and simple. Casey Keeler has them back to being Temple tough, and they're 5-5 looking to make a bowl game. They're at home in a stadium that is usually going to have a lack of energy. Can Tulane respond to that? Can they keep their title hopes alive? The American Conference is still open to them. Can they keep their title hopes alive? They're 8.5-point favorites on the road, and it's going to be tough. I think the line is a little bit misleading. Pay attention to that. I am going to pick Tulane to win this, but I think it's going to be closer than people expect. Kansas State at Utah. Utah is still technically in the playoff conversation, in the Big 12 title conversation as well. They need some help. They're going to need some help, and in their way is Kansas State. They have to take care of their business. And if they get some help, then that's just an added bonus. But this is a team that is playing really well. Kansas State is struggling. They struggled against Oklahoma State. So this one's really not hard to pick. Utah's 16.5-point favorites. They're playing at home, playing a team that's struggling. The Utes are going to take care of business. Michigan at Maryland. Michigan's playoff hopes are still alive. Maryland is trying to make a bowl game and make Mike Locksley look a little bit better than what he looks like right now. Now, Michigan, there's some debate right now if Justice Haynes is going to be out for the season or if he's truly able to go. That's a big question right now. I don't really know what it's going to look like. Maybe in the playoff, if they're in there, he'll be back, but we'll see what happens there. They don't have him for this one, but I do trust Michigan to win this game. They're 14-point favorites. If Bryce Underwood can continue growing and developing, that's a dangerous football team. They're not going to be in the Big Ten championship game, but they could make the playoff and could be a tough team to beat. TCU at Houston. TCU has kind of gone downhill recently. Houston is 8-2, looking for double-digit wins in the 2025 season. The Cougars are 3-point favorites, and if they can dictate the pace, they should be able to win this game. TCU has explosive weapons, and we saw kind of a implosion against BYU. Josh Hoover was getting after his wide receivers. It was not a pretty look, and TCU struggled mightily. Now, Houston's not going to be able to blow them out like that, but they are capable of winning. I do like the Cougs to win at home. They're 8-2 to get to 9-2 and have a chance to win 10 games in 2025. Pitt at Georgia Tech. Pitt is still in the ACC title conversation, as is Georgia Tech, so this one essentially eliminates one or the other. Pitt is 7-3. Georgia Tech is 9-1, and the Yellow Jackets have been the more consistent team, but Pitt is kind of that sleeper team that not a lot of people are given a chance to. They still have a chance to make the title game, and it'll be fun to see what happens if they're able to win this game. Georgia Tech's been kind of a cardiac team. They've been able to win some big games. They've won some games that they needed to come back in. And Haynes King is one of the most beloved college football quarterbacks. If he continues doing what he's doing, Georgia Tech wins this game. The way that Pitt can stay in the conversation is creating turnovers. This defense is super underrated. I don't think a lot of people give this defense credit for what it can do. That group of linebackers is phenomenal. The offense is really reliant upon their freshman quarterback, Mason Heinschel, and if he plays well, they're going to have a chance. And this is a Pitt team that can put up points, and if Georgia Tech's not careful, Pitt can definitely pull off the upset here. I am going to go with Georgia Tech. I trust them to win a big game more than I do Pitt, especially after what we saw last week. Tennessee at Florida. Tennessee is still looking to finish strong, and I think that there is a belief, a small belief really, that they could still make the college football playoff, but it's not looking great. But they have a rivalry game against Florida here that they are looking to win, and they have to do it in the swamp. Now, which version of DJ Lagway we get might dictate if Florida has a chance. We've seen him play well, but we've also seen him struggle. If he's the struggling kind of DJ Lagway, Tennessee's going to win this one without question. The Volunteers are 7-3, looking to win 9 games this season, and they're 3-point favorites. I will pick the Volunteers to win, but DJ Lagway holds the key to determine if he and his team are able to pull off an upset. They also might get Caleb Banks back. That is something to keep an eye on. That could have an impact on this game as well. BYU at Cincinnati. BYU is looking to hold on to its Big 12 title hopes on the road at Nippert Stadium against a Cincinnati team that is very interesting to watch. I'm very curious to see what Cincinnati can do in this game, and BYU has shown to be consistent. They've proven to be the consistent team, and they're looking at potential revenge against Texas Tech if they make the Big 12 championship game. Cincinnati's coming off a loss to Arizona. They are looking to bounce back. BYU is a 2.5-point favorite. Playing at Nippert Stadium is a very difficult test. They usually get that luxury of playing at their home stadium, but Cincinnati's at home in this one. I am going to pick BYU. I think that they can navigate that challenge. I think that they're going to be consistent enough, and their defense can rattle Brendan Sorsby just enough to be able to win this game. And finally, Utah State at Fresno State. Utah State's 5-5 and a much better team than I think people realize. Fresno State hasn't been on a lot of people's radars, but they are 7-3 and 2.5-point favorites. I am going to pick the Bulldogs to win this game, but this is a close game. Utah State is coming off of a tough loss to UNLV, and Fresno State is looking to continue its successful year. They could win 9 games, but beating Utah State will be a challenge.